I never thought living with someone could feel this intimate. Not like this. Not with him. When Lucas moved in, it was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month, while he got back on his feet after his breakup. He and his ex had been together for nearly 4 years, and when it ended, it was messy. Shared lease, mutual friends, even a dog they fought over like a child. I was the one person he could crash with without judgment. Or at least, that's what he thought. We had known each other since college, drifting in and out of each other's lives like people tend to do when life gets busy. Every couple months we'd trade texts, a random catch-up call, but nothing consistent. That changed the day he showed up on my doorstep with 2 duffel bags, dark circles under his eyes, and a tight-lipped smile that didn't quite reach the surface. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, stepping aside so he could walk in. That was 2.5 weeks ago. At first, things were easy, polite. I gave him the spare bedroom and tried to keep out of his way. He kept things tidy, cooked occasionally, and mostly stayed quiet. We weren't close back in school, not really, but he'd always been the kind of guy people gravitated toward. There was something about his presence, effortlessly magnetic. And being around him again, every day, reminded me of just how much I'd noticed him back then, how much I had ignored it. The thing is, Lucas is straight. At least, he always said he was. He had the long relationship, the standard love life, the confident way of moving through the world like someone who never had to second guess how he fit into it. And me? I've always been the observer, the quiet one, the guy who listens more than talks and gets crushed by unrequited feelings that he never dares to voice. So when I found myself noticing little things, how good he smelled when he got out of the shower, how his laugh filled the apartment when he got a text from someone that made him happy, I reminded myself to chill. This wasn't about me. He was going through a breakup. He was vulnerable. He didn't need to deal with my feelings on top of everything else. Then came that Thursday morning. I was halfway through pouring coffee when he walked into the kitchen wearing nothing but a towel. Just a plain white towel slung low around his waist, hair still damp, toothbrush in hand. I froze mid-pour. My wrist jerked just enough to spill a few drops on the counter. "Shit," I muttered, grabbing a napkin. Lucas looked up at me and grinned. "Morning. Sorry. Shower ran out of hot water halfway. You using it earlier?" Yeah, maybe. I didn't mean to." I focused too hard on wiping the spill. He leaned against the fridge like it was normal, like we were just 2 guys, one half naked, no big deal. "You're good," he said, brushing hair back from his forehead with one hand. "I'll just deal. Not like I have anywhere to be today." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I could feel the heat creeping up the back of my neck, and I hated how obvious I probably looked. He didn't move, just kept brushing his teeth like this was the most casual thing in the world. "You okay?" he asked after a second. "You look kind of tense." I laughed awkwardly. "Nah, just spilled coffee. It's nothing." He tilted his head, studying me. "You sure?" "Yeah." I gestured toward the living room. "I'm just gonna take this in there." "Cool," he nodded. "I'll finish up in a sec." I walked out, but even from the hallway, I could feel my heart pounding like I'd run a mile. I sat on the couch, staring into my mug, trying to shake it off. I was being stupid, overreacting, reading into something that wasn't there. But that night, something changed. We ended up watching a movie together, some dumb action flick he picked. We sat side by side on the couch, sharing a blanket because the AC was blasting too hard, and neither of us wanted to get up to adjust it. Halfway through, our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved. I don't know how long we sat like that, barely speaking. Him focused on the screen, me focused on him, and when the credits rolled and he turned to look at me, really look at me, I felt something tighten in my chest. "You're a good friend," he said. I nodded, but my throat was suddenly dry. "You too," he smiled. I don't think I've said thanks for letting me crash here. You don't have to thank me, I said. You're welcome as long as you need. His eyes searched mine, and for a second, just a second, I thought he might say something more. But he didn't. He just leaned back, pulled the blanket up a little higher, and closed his eyes like he wasn't in any rush to leave the moment. And neither was I. The next few days were normal, or maybe I just wanted them to be. Lucas went back to job hunting and making polite conversation over breakfast. I buried myself in work, trying to act like I wasn't hyper-aware of every movement he made in the apartment. But something had shifted. It was subtle, a pause too long in the hallway. A glance that lasted just a moment more than it should. A few extra seconds when our hands brushed, reaching for the same dish. And then came Friday. It had rained all afternoon. The sky was gray, and the streets were slick. The kind of weather that makes you want to cancel plans and stay inside with a blanket and something warm. I was on the couch with my laptop when Lucas came in from a walk, soaked through and shivering. Jesus, you're drenched, I said, setting my laptop aside. Why didn't you take the umbrella? Didn't think I'd be out long. He kicked off his shoes and peeled off his hoodie, revealing a clingy white t-shirt plastered to his skin. Apparently, I miscalculated. I stood up, tossing him a towel from the bathroom. Go change before you get sick. He caught it, running it through his hair. Thanks, Mom. I rolled my eyes, turning away too quickly to be casual. Later that night, he knocked on my bedroom door. It was almost midnight. I was already in bed, reading something I wasn't really absorbing, when he poked his head in. Hey, he said. You still up? I nodded. Yeah. What's up? He hesitated in the doorway, one hand on the frame. Mind if I crash in here tonight? I don't know why. Just... my room feels weirdly quiet. Like too quiet. I blinked. Yeah, sure. He stepped in, closing the door softly behind him. Thanks. I can sleep on top of the covers or whatever. You don't have to do that, I said quickly. It's a queen. Plenty of space. He smiled a little. You sure? Yeah. I mean, it's not the first time we've shared a bed. That was true. Back in college. During road trips or hangouts that went too late, we'd crashed on the same mattress more than once. But that was different. That was before I realized how I felt. He climbed into bed, settling on the opposite side. We lay in silence for a while, both staring up at the ceiling. The sound of rain still tapped against the windows, rhythmic and soft. Thanks again, he said eventually. No problem. He turned slightly. I've been thinking about stuff. Life, I guess. How everything kind of blew up all at once. Yeah, I said, unsure what to add. Sometimes I wonder if I messed up, he murmured. If I picked the wrong person to try to build a life with. I glanced at him. His eyes were still on the ceiling, but his voice was low, like a secret he wasn't sure he should say aloud. I think we all wonder that at some point, I offered. But I don't think it means you actually did. Maybe. He sighed, then turned onto his side, facing away from me. You ever think about what might have happened if you'd made different choices? All the time, I said, my voice softer now. Another stretch of silence passed. Then, you're easy to be around. You know that? I smiled faintly, even though he couldn't see it. Thanks. A few minutes later, his breathing evened out, and I thought he'd fallen asleep. But then he shifted again, this time pressing closer. I felt the warmth of his body through the sheets, the brush of his arm against mine, and then his head settled on my shoulder. I stopped breathing. I lay there, stiff as stone, my brain scrambling to make sense of what was happening. His weight was soft, familiar, strangely comforting. I wanted to say something, to ask if he was okay, to ask if this meant what I thought it meant, but I didn't. I just stayed still, heart pounding, pretending like this was fine. Eventually, I fell asleep with his breath warm against my collarbone. I woke up to the faint blue of early morning sneaking through the blinds. Lucas was still there, head on my shoulder, breathing slow and steady. My arm had fallen asleep sometime during the night, and I shifted just enough to shake out the pins and needles without waking him. Or so I thought. As I moved, he stirred slightly, a quiet sound escaping him, half a sigh, half a murmur. His hand, which had somehow ended up on my chest during the night, flexed gently. Not tight, just enough to feel like he was holding on. I froze. I didn't know if he was awake or still drifting in that space between dreams. I didn't know what this meant, if it meant anything at all. But what I did know was this: I didn't want to move. So I didn't. I closed my eyes again, pretending to sleep, heart pounding in my chest as if it might give me away. A few minutes passed. Then, slowly, his fingers started to move. They weren't exploring exactly, more like noticing. The tip of one finger grazed just beneath the edge of my t-shirt, brushing bare skin. Barely a touch. But I felt it everywhere. I kept my breathing even, still pretending. Then I felt him shift again. Closer this time. His nose brushed my neck, the air from his breath warm against my skin. And then, I swear to God, he kissed me. Not a full kiss, not on the lips, just a soft, hesitant press of his lips to the curve of my shoulder. Barely anything. But enough. Enough to tell me I wasn't imagining this. My body tensed involuntarily, and he pulled back immediately. I opened my eyes. Lucas was staring at me, eyes wide, clearly caught. "Sorry," he whispered. "I didn't think you were awake." We stared at each other in the quiet morning light. I felt every nerve in my body go on high alert. "It's fine," I said, my voice dry. "No, it's weird. You kissed me," I said. "I know," he whispered, sitting up slowly. "I wasn't trying to make things complicated. I didn't even know I was going to do that." I sat up too, turning to face him. "You weren't asleep, were you?" he asked. "No." A beat passed. "You okay?" he said, voice suddenly smaller. I studied his face, the way his jaw was clenched just a little too tight, like he was bracing for a punch that hadn't come. "I'm not mad," I said. "I just don't know what this is." "I don't either," he admitted. "I just know that when I woke up like that, with you, I didn't want to move." That hit me harder than I expected. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, finally, neither did I. We sat there, both unsure of what came next. The sun had fully broken over the horizon, and the apartment filled with soft golden light. It should have felt warm, peaceful, but all I felt was a storm just under my skin. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, looking away. "I'm not trying to mess you up," he said. "You're not," I replied. "You're just confusing the hell out of me." He nodded, quietly. "Yeah, same." He stood up, grabbing his hoodie from the floor. "I'm gonna take a walk, clear my head a bit." I nodded, unsure of what else to say. He looked at me one last time, like he wanted to explain something but couldn't find the words. Then he was gone, leaving the door cracked behind him. And me? I just sat there, staring at the sunlight on the floor, wondering what the hell had just happened, and why it felt like the beginning of something I wasn't ready for, but wanted more than anything. Lucas was gone for almost 2 hours. I spent most of that time pacing around the apartment, starting and abandoning 3 different texts I never sent. My thoughts wouldn't settle. Every time I tried to reason through it, what it meant, why he did it, I hit the same wall. He kissed me. He kissed me. And not in a drunk, impulsive, late-night way. He kissed me thinking I was asleep. Quiet. Soft. Like it meant something. When he finally came back, I heard his key in the lock and straightened instinctively. Heart in my throat. He stepped inside, hoodie up, headphones hanging around his neck. His cheeks were pink from the cold, and he looked tired, but calm. He saw me and paused, then let the door close behind him. "Hey," he said, voice even. "Hey," I replied, just as cautiously. He took a breath and set his keys down. "You want coffee?" I blinked. "Now?" "I just need to do something with my hands." I nodded and followed him into the kitchen. We didn't speak while he ground beans and filled the kettle, but the air between us wasn't tense. It was something else. Charged. Like the words were right there, just waiting to break through. When the coffee was finally poured, he slid a mug across the counter to me. Then he looked up and said, "Can we talk?" "Yeah," I said quietly. He came around the counter and leaned against the table. "I don't really know what I'm doing." "I need to say that first." I nodded. "Okay." "I didn't plan to come in your room last night," he continued. I felt weird, lonely, I guess, and being around you makes it easier to breathe." He paused like he was waiting for me to react, but I didn't know how. I just kept my gaze steady, heart pounding like crazy. I didn't think I'd actually fall asleep, let alone, he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "What I did this morning, that kiss, it wasn't a joke or a mistake." My breath caught. "It wasn't just comfort. I meant it." I stared at him, stunned. "I don't know what I am," he admitted. "I've never felt this way about another guy before. But with you, this just feels different. Real. Like I've been standing in the wrong spot this whole time." A silence stretched between us, long and fragile. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" I asked. He gave a weak smile. "I think I was afraid that if I said it out loud, it'd change everything, and I didn't want to lose you." "You haven't lost me," I said, and the words surprised even me with how certain they sounded. His eyes flicked up to mine, hope flickering there. I stepped closer, mug in hand, and took a breath. "I've had feelings for you. For a while, I just assumed they'd stay in the never gonna happen box." Lucas let out a soft laugh, almost disbelieving. "Yeah?" I nodded. "Yeah." There was another pause. One of those weightless ones where everything feels suspended, like time is waiting for the next move. Then he asked, "Can I kiss you again?" This time, I said yes, and when he stepped in, his hands careful on my sides, and kissed me, really kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't a question. It was a release. Months, maybe years of tension, dissolving into something warmer, softer, more certain. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. "So what now?" he asked. I smiled. "We take it slow. We figure it out," he nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." And just like that, something that had always felt just out of reach, impossible even, was now suddenly real, tangible, right here in front of me, with Lucas's hands still on my hips and his breath still warm against my skin. After that morning, things didn't exactly fall into place neatly, but they didn't fall apart either. Lucas and I didn't make a big announcement to ourselves or to each other. There wasn't some grand conversation with labels and definitions. Instead, it was little shifts. How we moved around each other, how our touches lingered, how we looked at each other a little longer than we used to. That night, we watched TV on the couch again. But this time, we didn't sit on opposite ends like usual. He sat next to me, close enough that our thighs touched, and when I leaned slightly into him, he didn't move away. His hand drifted to my knee like it had been there 100 times before. It felt natural, familiar, but new all the same. I kept expecting some tension to rise up, some awkwardness to ruin it, but it never came. One night, maybe a week later, we ended up at a small gathering at a mutual friend's apartment. Just 8 or 9 people from college, drinks and laughter and the same old inside jokes. I wasn't planning on saying anything. Not about us. Not yet. But Lucas had other ideas. We were standing in the kitchen, side by side, chatting with someone we both vaguely remembered from sophomore year, when the guy, Mark, maybe, asked, "So you two still roommates, or what?" Lucas didn't miss a beat. "Sort of," he said with a small grin. "He's my guy now." I choked on my drink. Mark raised his eyebrows. "Oh, nice. Congrats, man." Lucas just shrugged, easy and calm like it was no big deal. Like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I turned to look at him, stunned. My heart pounded, but not in panic. In something closer to awe. After the guy walked off, I nudged Lucas's shoulder. "Your guy, huh?" He gave me a sheepish look. "Too much?" "No," I said. "Just unexpected." He nodded, suddenly looking serious. "I didn't want to keep pretending. You don't have to say it back or anything. I just wanted people to know." I looked at him. "You mean that?" He stepped closer, his voice quiet. "Yeah. I've never been this sure about something." My brain struggled to catch up with my heart. "Okay," I said softly. "Then I'm yours." Something flickered in his eyes. Something soft and fierce at the same time. He leaned in, barely brushing his lips against mine, just enough to make my knees wobble. "Good," he murmured. The rest of the night, he kept close. He wasn't over the top or loud about it, but his hand found mine when we sat. His knee nudged against mine under the table, and he looked at me like he wanted to memorize my face. When we got home later, both slightly buzzed and half laughing about something stupid someone had said, he didn't go to his room. He followed me into mine without a word. And when we climbed into bed together, no pretense or excuse, it didn't feel like a turning point. It felt like the next step we were always going to take. He curled into me with an ease that made it feel like we'd been doing this forever. "I wasn't sure I could ever have this," he whispered in the dark. "But now that I do, I don't want to mess it up." "You won't," I said, pressing a kiss to his temple. "Just don't run from it." "I'm not running," he said. "Not from you." And he didn't. I didn't expect him to say it like that, so casually, so honestly, like it had always been true. It happened a couple weeks after that night at our friend's place. Life didn't stop just because something had changed between us. Lucas was busy. Interviews, errands, odd jobs he was doing to save money before figuring out his next big move. I had deadlines to meet and clients to wrangle. For a few days, we were barely in sync. He'd get home late, I'd be up early. We'd pass each other in the kitchen, share a tired smile, a forehead kiss, and then disappear into separate parts of the apartment like we were living parallel lives again. Then came Thursday. He'd been out all afternoon, some day job helping a friend's cousin with a garage cleanout. When he got home, I was already in bed, half asleep, book resting on my chest. I heard the front door open, then close with that soft, familiar click. His footsteps came down the hallway, slow, a little hesitant. Then a knock. My door was cracked already, but he tapped it anyway. "You awake?" he whispered. "Yeah," I said, sitting up a little. "You just get back?" He stepped inside, hoodie still on, smelling faintly like the outdoors. "Yeah. Sorry I missed dinner." "No big deal. There's leftovers in the fridge." He walked over to the bed, hesitated like he wasn't sure if he should sit. I shifted over. "Come here," I said. He let out a breath and sat next to me. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me and said it, just like that. "I missed you," I blinked. "You what?" He gave a half shrug, eyes down. "I know it's dumb. It's only been a few days. But I missed this. Us. You. It wasn't dumb. It was perfect." I touched his hand. "I missed you too." He looked up, and that small, warm smile, the one I was starting to recognize as just for me, spread across his face. We didn't do anything dramatic. We just curled into each other under the blanket like we'd done a dozen times before. But this time, he held on tighter. This time, I felt something different in the way he pressed his forehead to mine before we fell asleep. Like we weren't just figuring things out anymore. Like we'd already found something worth holding on to. There's a moment when you stop asking what something is and start knowing it. When it stops being a question and just becomes truth. For me, that moment came on a quiet Sunday night. We weren't doing anything special, just lying in bed, the window cracked open to let in the cool spring air. I had my arm draped over Lucas's chest, and he was absent-mindedly running his fingers along my wrist like it calmed him. Maybe it did. We hadn't talked much that day, Not because anything was wrong, just one of those peaceful days where words didn't feel necessary. We stayed in, cooked a lazy breakfast, took turns reading articles off our phones and laughing at dumb memes. Everything simple, easy. But then, lying there in the dark, Lucas turned his head toward me and said, "I keep thinking about how close I came to never knowing this." My fingers paused on his chest. Knowing what? He didn't answer right away. His hand reached for mine, laced our fingers together. "This," he said. "You, all of it." The room was still. No TV, no city noise, just the faint sound of wind through the trees. "I spent so much time in that other relationship," he continued, telling myself I was happy. And I wasn't lying exactly, but I was stuck. I didn't even know I could want this, didn't know I was allowed to. "You always were," I said quietly. He turned to face me more fully. "I didn't think about guys like that. Not until," he exhaled, "not until you." My throat tightened. "I don't know what that says about me," he added. "Maybe I'm not one thing or the other. Maybe I don't care anymore. I just know I want you." I moved closer, forehead against his. "You don't owe anyone a definition, least of all me." He nodded and then whispered, "Still, I hope it's okay that I say it." "Say what?" "That I love you." Time slowed. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. He didn't sit up or say it with some big flourish. It was soft, barely more than breath. But I felt it like a lightning strike. I stared at him, heart racing. "You do?" He nodded once. "Yeah." My voice cracked as I said it back. "I love you too." He smiled, this big, unguarded smile I hadn't seen on him before. And then he pulled me into the kind of kiss that wasn't about urgency or desire. It was about something settled, something real. That night, we didn't sleep for a long time. Not because we were talking or doing anything intense. We just lay there, tangled up, touching in quiet, unhurried ways, like we were learning each other all over again, but for the first time. Like everything finally made sense. And when we did fall asleep, his hand was still in mine. I woke up before him. The sun was streaming through the window in soft, golden bands, and for once, I didn't reach for my phone. I just lay there, watching him breathe. His face was relaxed, eyes gently closed, lips parted just enough that I could see the rise and fall of his chest. He looked peaceful, like someone who had finally stopped carrying weight he didn't need to. I traced the line of his shoulder with my eyes, down the slope of his arm to where his hand still rested against mine. That hand that had reached for me in the dark more times than I'd ever let myself admit. That hand that had said so much before his mouth ever caught up. There had been so many moments where I thought, this can't be happening, this has to be a phase. He'll leave, he'll regret it, I'll get hurt. But he hadn't run. He hadn't woken up and pretended it didn't happen. He hadn't made it weird. Instead, last night, he told me he loved me. And this morning, he was still here. His eyes fluttered open slowly, that sleepy confusion giving way to the smallest grin when he saw me watching him. "Hey," he murmured, voice scratchy. "Hey." He stretched slightly, his arm brushing mine. "You've been staring at me? Only for like 20 minutes. Creepy," I smiled. "A little." He rolled onto his side, closer. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think I'm better than okay." "Yeah?" he asked, brushing hair from my forehead. "Me too." There was a quiet moment then, not awkward, just full, and then he said, "So this is a thing now, right?" I laughed. "You tell me. You called me yours in front of a room full of people last week." He grinned. "I did, didn't I?" "You gonna take it back?" He shook his head slowly. "Not a chance." We got out of bed eventually, made breakfast together, badly. Lucas burned the toast and blamed the toaster, and I made the eggs too salty and blamed him for distracting me. It didn't matter. What mattered was that when we sat down, he pulled his chair close. When he took a bite of his over-salted eggs, he made a face but kept eating anyway. When I leaned over and kissed his temple, he didn't flinch or pull back. He leaned into it. Later that day, I caught him updating the emergency contact form on his phone. He put me down. He didn't say anything about it, just did it like it was obvious. And maybe it was. Because somehow, between half-finished conversations and long looks in one shared bed, we had stopped pretending. We had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. We had just become. And as I watched him laugh at something dumb on TV that night, his hand finding mine again without looking, I realized something else. I hadn't just fallen in love with him. I had fallen into something I didn't even know I needed. Something steady, something real, something that felt like home.